The war gods had come. They arrived silently, like shadows in the vastness of space, sure that nothing could stand in their way. They had traveled across galaxies, conquering planets and civilizations without breaking a sweat. Their power was unmatched, their ships indestructible. The universe had bowed to them time and time again. Earth, a small, insignificant speck in the grand design of the cosmos, was nothing more than another easy conquest, or so they thought. The war gods were known across the stars as ruthless conquerors, feared for their might and cunning. No one had ever dared to challenge them. They had crushed entire civilizations without hesitation, leaving nothing but ash and rubble in their wake. It was the way of the universe. Power ruled, and the strong survived. But Earth was different. It had never been a target before, not by anyone of consequence. To the war gods, it was a primitive world, full of weak, insignificant humans. They had watched from afar, studying Earth's people as they lived in their quiet cities, unaware of the dangers that lay just beyond their atmosphere. The war gods saw no reason to fear these creatures, so they decided it was time to strike. On the surface, Earth seemed peaceful. But beneath that calm exterior, there was something more. Something hidden. Something that even the war gods could not predict. General Aratus, the leader of the war gods' invasion fleet, stood at the helm of his command ship, staring down at Earth. His alien eyes narrowed with contempt as he surveyed the planet below. "Prepare for landing," he commanded in a low, gravelly voice. "We'll take it quickly, as we always do." The fleet descended toward Earth's atmosphere, its massive ships dwarfing the planet's largest cities. The first wave was designed to be swift and overwhelming. The war gods had no doubt that their superior technology would crush any resistance. But they were wrong. As the ships descended, something stirred beneath the surface of the Earth. It was not a force they could see, not something they could measure with their advanced sensors. But it was there, waiting. On the ground, in a small research lab hidden deep within the heart of the Amazon jungle, Dr. Amelia Hayes watched the readings on her monitor, her heart pounding in her chest. For weeks, she had been tracking unusual signals, strange disturbances in the Earth's magnetic field. At first, she thought it was a glitch, a natural anomaly. But the pattern had become too consistent to ignore. Something was wrong. Something was coming. She had no idea what, but she was about to find out. Across the world, in the halls of Earth's military command, the first alarms went off. A fleet of ships, hundreds, maybe thousands, was approaching the planet. It was unlike anything they had seen before. The ships were enormous, their dark forms blocking out the sun as they entered the atmosphere. The war gods had arrived. Commander Lucas Hawk, a battle-hardened veteran of Earth's military, stood at the command center, his jaw set in determination. "Activate the defense grid. Prepare the forces. We've got an invasion on our hands." The human soldiers rushed into action, but deep down, they knew they were facing something far beyond their capabilities. The war gods' technology was far superior. Earth's weapons, though powerful, were no match for what they were up against. It was clear that this would be a battle for survival, not victory. But as the first wave of war gods descended on Earth's cities, something unexpected happened. The ground beneath their feet trembled. It was a subtle shake at first, barely noticeable, but it grew stronger by the second. The war gods paused, their confident smirks faltering as the strange sensation rippled through their ships. What was this? And then, as they made landfall, it hit them. The true power of Earth had begun to awaken. Dr. Hayes's monitors went wild as massive, unknown energy surges rippled through the planet. The data was incomprehensible, chaotic. But she understood one thing: something was stirring. And it was something far more ancient and powerful than she had ever imagined. The war gods had underestimated humanity. They thought their weapons would be enough to crush the humans, but what they didn't realize was that Earth had a power of its own, something buried deep within its history, long forgotten by most of the world. The war god's first mistake had been thinking that Earth was just another easy target. In the skies above, the war god's ships began to tremble, their shields flickering as the ground beneath them seemed to fight back. Commander Hawk's eyes widened in disbelief as the planet's surface began to shift. Massive energy pulses erupted from the ground, reaching toward the invading fleet. "Target their engines," Hawk ordered. "We can't let them land." But the war gods were not so easily deterred. Their ships began to retaliate, firing powerful energy blasts at the surface. The ground erupted in explosions, but the strange energy pulses did not stop. Instead, they grew stronger. The Earth had awakened. As the first battle began, the war gods realized something that would haunt them for the rest of the invasion. Earth was not the weak, primitive world they thought it was, and the humans they had underestimated were far more dangerous than they could ever imagine. The war gods had made their first mistake, and it would not be their last. The war gods had never encountered anything like this before. They had invaded countless worlds, obliterating civilizations without hesitation. Yet Earth, a seemingly primitive world, had surprised them in a way that no other had. They had expected easy victories, but they were wrong. The planet itself was fighting back, its power surging like a force of nature. As the war god's ships hovered above Earth's cities, firing their devastating energy beams, they were met with an unexpected resistance. The energy pulses they had previously dismissed as a mere anomaly had grown into a coordinated, almost intelligent attack. Their shields flickered under the strain, and their weapons struggled to breach the planet's defenses. The war god's technology was advanced, yes, but the Earth's strange, primal energy was proving to be more than a match. Dr. Amelia Hayes watched the chaos unfold from her underground lab, her heart racing. She had been following the signals for weeks, but she never expected them to lead to this. The Earth was not only responding, it was fighting back with something far greater than she could have ever predicted. "What in the world is going on?" she muttered to herself, her fingers flying over the keyboard as she tried to make sense of the data. The readings were unlike anything she had ever encountered. It was as if the planet itself was alive, aware of the danger, and actively defending itself. She had studied the Earth's core, its magnetic field, its history, but none of it had prepared her for this. The planet was awakening, and it was not a peaceful awakening. Across the globe, humanity was coming to terms with the unimaginable. People looked up at the sky, eyes filled with fear and wonder as the massive war god's ships blotted out the sun. Governments scrambled to mobilize, but most were paralyzed by the sheer scale of the invasion. Earth's military forces were outmatched, their weapons barely making a dent in the oncoming assault. Commander Lucas Hawk stood at the front lines, his mind racing as he coordinated the defense efforts. He knew the truth. Humanity had no hope of winning against such a formidable enemy. But there was one thing the war gods didn't know, something that could shift the tide in their favor. Humans had a unique quality. They didn't back down. They didn't quit. And most importantly, they had something the war gods could never understand: an unshakable will to survive. The war gods' ships began to fire down on the cities, their energy beams obliterating buildings and roads, sending plumes of smoke and dust into the air. But even as the destruction unfolded, something else was happening. Beneath the surface of the Earth, deep within the planet's core, ancient mechanisms began to stir. The Earth's core was not just a ball of molten rock and metal. It was something much more. For millennia, it had lain dormant, its true purpose forgotten by time. It was a weapon so old, so powerful, that even the war gods' advanced technology could not comprehend it. It had been built by an ancient civilization, long gone, to protect the Earth from threats just like this one. And now, that weapon was waking up. As the war gods' ships moved closer to the planet's surface, the Earth began to respond in ways they could never have predicted. Massive energy storms erupted from the planet's core, shooting toward the skies like great lightning bolts. The skies turned dark, crackling with power as the storms collided with the war gods' ships. Their shields faltered under the intensity of the energy, and their weapons failed to break through the oncoming blasts. The war gods had thought they were the most powerful beings in the universe. They had thought that Earth was just another conquest, a small, insignificant world that would fall to their might. But they were wrong. They had awakened something far more dangerous than they could have imagined. "Retreat!" General Aratus shouted, his voice laced with panic. "This planet is not what we thought. Pull back." But it was too late. The war god's ships attempted to break free from the planet's grip, but the energy storms only grew stronger. The Earth was not just defending itself, it was attacking, and it was relentless. The war gods had no choice but to fight back, but they soon realized that the very planet beneath them was their enemy now. The Earth had become a force, a living, breathing entity, and it was not going to let them take its home. Dr. Hayes watched in awe as the data from her monitors became more chaotic. The Earth was doing something that could change the course of history. The ancient weapon buried deep within the planet was not just protecting it. It was asserting dominance. The war gods had made a mistake, and now they would pay the price. The skies above Earth were alive with energy, and the war gods were starting to understand that their invasion was not just an assault on a planet. It was an assault on a sleeping giant. The Earth had awakened, and its fury was unlike anything the war gods had ever seen. And as the war gods scrambled to regain control, they realized one undeniable truth. They had underestimated humanity. It was not just the humans themselves who posed a threat. It was the planet they called home. A planet that had been waiting, watching, and now, finally, fighting back. In the heart of Earth's military command, Commander Hawk stood tall, his resolve hardening. "This is our home," he said to his team, his voice steady. "We protect it at all costs." The war gods had made their first mistake, but it was only the beginning. The war gods had underestimated the fury of Earth, and now they were learning a harsh lesson. They had expected to face an easy conquest, a world ripe for the taking. But what they had awakened was a force far greater than any they had encountered before. The very planet they had targeted for invasion had turned against them, unleashing a wrath unlike anything the universe had ever witnessed. The energy storms continued to rage across the sky, striking the war gods' ships with blinding power. Their once impenetrable shields were buckling under the relentless onslaught. The Earth, it seemed, was alive. Its storms, its magnetic field, and its very core all working together in perfect harmony to defend itself. General Aratus, the leader of the war god's fleet, could feel the tide turning. His ships, once so powerful, were now struggling to maintain control. He slammed his fist against the command console, his face contorted with frustration. "Retreat. I want all ships pulling back now," he barked. But his orders came too late. As the war god's ships tried to flee, they found themselves caught in a massive, invisible force field. The Earth's energy had grown stronger, more concentrated, as if the planet itself had become a massive weapon, targeting every ship with pinpoint accuracy. The once unstoppable fleet was now in disarray. A few of the war god's ships managed to break free, but many were forced to land on Earth's surface, their systems damaged beyond repair. The war gods had no idea what had hit them. They were no longer the hunters. They had become the hunted. Dr. Amelia Hayes, watching from her lab, felt a strange mix of awe and fear. The energy readings on her screens were off the charts. The Earth wasn't just fighting back. It was fighting back intelligently. She had studied the planet for years, but this was something entirely different. This was not just a natural defense mechanism. It was as if Earth had activated something ancient, something buried deep within its core. She couldn't help but feel that humanity had just tapped into something far beyond their comprehension. On the ground, Commander Lucas Hawk stood with his team, observing the chaos unfolding in the skies above. The war gods were retreating, but not in the way they had hoped. The planet itself had risen to defend humanity, and the humans were not far behind. Hawk felt the thrill of battle surge through him, but he also knew the war was far from over. "We've got them on the ropes," Hawk said, his voice steady but filled with determination. "But don't get cocky. The war gods won't give up easily. They'll be back, and when they return, they'll come with everything they have." He was right. As the war gods regrouped, they realized that Earth was not just a planet to conquer. It was a living, breathing entity, with a power that could not be measured or predicted. They had invaded a world that had been waiting for them, a world that had been dormant for centuries, but was now awakening with an unrelenting fury. The war gods' fleet began to regroup, but they were no longer the confident, invincible force they had once been. They were wary, cautious. They had learned their first lesson the hard way. Earth was not a world to be taken lightly. It had power, it had strength, and it was more than capable of defending itself. As the dust began to settle, Hawk's team moved forward, their eyes scanning the wreckage left by the war gods. They knew this was just the beginning, but for the first time since the invasion began, they felt a glimmer of hope. The Earth was fighting back, and so were they. Humanity had always been resourceful, and now they had the advantage. Dr. Hayes, still monitoring the data from her lab, leaned back in her chair, exhausted but exhilarated. The planet's energy was unlike anything she had ever imagined. It was a power that could change the course of the war, and maybe even the future of humanity itself. "This is just the beginning," she whispered to herself as the realization sank in. The war gods think they know what they're dealing with, but they have no idea what Earth is capable of. The war gods' ships, battered and broken, began to retreat into the far reaches of space. But their retreat was not a defeat. It was a temporary retreat. They would regroup, they would strategize, and they would return. They had underestimated Earth's power, but they had not given up. The war gods were coming back, and they were going to bring everything they had. But Earth had something the war gods didn't understand. It had the will to survive. It had the strength to fight back. And it had the war gods' worst nightmare, the human spirit. For the first time, the war gods understood the true nature of their mistake. They thought they had conquered the galaxy, but Earth had proven them wrong. And as they retreated into the depths of space, they couldn't shake the feeling that they had just entered something ancient, something terrifying. The Earth's war gods were awakening, and this time, they were not alone. Humanity had found its power, and it was not backing down. The war was far from over, but the tide had turned, and the war gods would soon learn that the true strength of humanity was not just in its weapons, it was in its will to fight. The war gods' fleet had retreated, but the effects of their failed invasion were far from over. As the battered ships made their way back into the unknown regions of space, Earth's defenders didn't let their guard down. Commander Lucas Hawk, along with Dr. Amelia Hayes, watched as the horizon lit up with the debris of the war gods' failed assault. For the first time since the invasion began, the humans felt something they had never experienced before, a sense of overwhelming victory, mixed with the quiet dread of what was to come. Hawk stood on the battlefield, overlooking the smoldering remains of a war god's ship that had crashed on Earth. His heart was still racing from the adrenaline of the fight, but his mind raced even faster. The war gods were regrouping. He could feel it. They would return, and next time, they would come prepared. "We've won this battle, but we haven't won the war," Hawk said, his voice low. "The war gods won't rest until they get what they came for." Dr. Hayes, standing beside him, nodded in agreement, her gaze locked onto the ruins of the alien ship. The energy signatures she had been studying were still off the charts, but there was something else, something deeper beneath the surface. Earth's energy reserves had been replenished during the battle, almost as if the planet was feeding off the conflict. Something was awakening beneath the crust, and it wasn't just a defense mechanism. It was something far more ancient. "There's more to this than we understand," Dr. Hayes said, her voice tinged with both fascination and fear. "It's like the planet's not just protecting itself, It's evolving. The Earth is becoming something else. Something stronger. Hawk turned to face her, his expression a mixture of concern and determination. Stronger than what? I don't know, she replied. But if the war gods had any idea what they were really up against, they wouldn't have dared to invade in the first place. As the days passed, the human forces regrouped. The war gods' retreat didn't mean they were done. Far from it. The war was far from over, and humanity needed to prepare for the inevitable return. However, the humans weren't the only ones planning. The war gods, too, were making their own calculations. Back in the far reaches of space, General Aratus was furious. He had underestimated Earth, and now he knew that the planet was no longer the soft target they had once believed it to be. The human resistance, along with the planet's surprising ability to fight back, had shaken his confidence. Prepare for the second wave. Aratus ordered his commanders, his voice a deep growl of frustration. This time, we will not fail. On Earth, the leaders of the human resistance, Hawk, Dr. Hayes, and others, were working around the clock to harness the power that had been unleashed during the war gods' first attack. They had made a critical discovery. Earth's energy was not just a natural phenomenon. It was something more, something ancient, and something that had been dormant for eons. But why? Why had it chosen to awaken now? The answer, as they would soon learn, lay deep within the planet's core. Amelia Hayes led a team of scientists into one of the largest war zones, where the energy disturbance had been most intense. As they examined the site of the battle, they uncovered something strange, a structure buried beneath the ground that had been long hidden beneath the planet's surface. It looked like a relic of some ancient civilization, far older than anything humanity had encountered before. This doesn't make any sense, Dr. Hayes whispered, as she carefully examined the structure. This doesn't look like something humans could have built. This is alien. But it was clear from the markings that it wasn't the work of the war gods. No, this was something older. Something far older. It's like the Earth itself was preparing for this moment, she continued, her voice shaking with the implications. This civilization, whatever it was, knew the war gods would come, and they left behind a way to defend Earth, a weapon. Hawk, hearing the news, immediately understood the magnitude of their discovery. They weren't just fighting to protect Earth. They were standing between two forces far greater than anything they could imagine. An ancient, unseen power buried deep within the planet itself, and an unstoppable alien threat determined to take over. The two forces, the war gods and the awakened power of Earth, were on a collision course. Humanity had unwittingly become the bridge between them. Their survival depended on understanding the secrets of the ancient structure and awakening the true power of the Earth before the war gods could strike again. Hawk was resolute. We don't have much time. We need to unlock whatever's down there, and we need to do it fast. The humans were about to dive into a war that was far beyond anything they had prepared for. This wasn't just a fight for survival anymore. It was a battle to awaken the true potential of Earth, to unlock a power that could either save them or destroy them all. The war gods had underestimated Earth once, but they wouldn't make that mistake again. And Earth, it seemed, was ready to show them exactly why. As the human resistance began to delve deeper into the Earth's mysterious past, a sense of urgency gripped them all. They could feel the ancient power stirring beneath their feet, but would they be able to harness it in time? Or would the war gods return with their full force, overwhelming humanity and the planet itself? The planet was no longer just Earth. It was something far more, something ancient, something fierce, and the war gods had no idea what they were about to awaken. The tide was turning once again, and this time it was in humanity's favor. The days after the discovery of the ancient structure deep beneath the Earth felt like an endless countdown. Commander Lucas Hawk, Dr. Amelia Hayes, and their team of scientists and military leaders had become consumed with their mission to unlock the secrets of the ancient power hidden within the planet. Every day, they worked tirelessly to decipher the alien markings, to study the strange technology, and to understand the force they were up against. But time was running out. They could feel it. The war gods were gathering. Their ships were returning, their armies rebuilding. Earth had barely caught its breath, and already the next storm was coming. The second wave of invasion was inevitable. It wasn't just a matter of survival now. It was about fighting back, about awakening the power of Earth itself. Dr. Hayes, working day and night, finally made a breakthrough. A specific sequence of symbols on the structure was like a key to activating the dormant force buried deep in the planet's core. As she and her team deciphered the final parts of the puzzle, the energy beneath them began to stir, as if in response. "It's happening," she whispered, her voice filled with awe and fear. "The Earth, it's waking up." Hawk stood beside her, watching as the ground trembled, just slightly at first. The air felt different, charged, alive. It was as though the planet itself was taking a deep breath, readying itself for the battle to come. But no one could predict what came next. Suddenly, the entire area shook violently, as if the very core of the Earth was shifting. The energy that had been dormant for millennia was now coursing through the planet, spreading outward like an electric pulse. The ancient structure seemed to respond, its alien technology lighting up, revealing massive, spiraling patterns on the surface that stretched across the land. The earth beneath their feet cracked open, revealing massive, glowing veins of energy deep within. It was clear now. This wasn't just an old weapon. It was something alive. Something that could rival the war gods themselves. Hawk's heart pounded in his chest as he watched the power surge from the Earth's core. The ground beneath their feet had become a battlefield, but this time, it was a battle that was already in motion. The ancient power was awake, and it had chosen its side. But would it be enough? Meanwhile, in deep space, General Aratus stood at the helm of his flagship, watching as his fleet advanced toward Earth. The war gods had learned much from their first defeat, and now they were coming prepared. Their weapons were stronger, their numbers greater, and their resolve unshakable. "This time, we will not fail," Aratus muttered to himself, his eyes narrowing as he stared at the flickering image of Earth on the display screen. "We will crush them." But as his fleet neared the planet, something began to happen. A strange energy pulse appeared on his scanners, growing rapidly stronger. The war god's ships were well equipped to detect alien technology, but this was different. This was far beyond anything they had encountered before. The pulse was vast, too vast to ignore. "What is this?" Aratus growled, staring at the readout in disbelief. "This energy signature, it's coming from Earth itself." His commanders scrambled to make sense of the data, but it was clear now. The humans had tapped into something far more powerful than any of them had realized. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," Aratus ordered, his voice a mix of determination and fear. "We don't know what this is, but we're going in. Full speed ahead." But it was too late. The first wave of war god ships that entered Earth's orbit was met with an explosion of energy. The energy from the planet itself lashed out like a whip, enveloping the alien ships in blinding light. The ships trembled under the force of the pulse, and one by one, they were struck down, crashing into the atmosphere with a deafening roar. Aratus gritted his teeth, watching his fleet being decimated by an unseen force. "No, we will not be beaten by these insignificant creatures," he roared, slamming his fist against the console. "We are the war gods. We are invincible." But the more his fleet pushed forward, the stronger the planet's power seemed to grow. The Earth was not just defending itself, it was fighting back with a fury that even the war gods couldn't comprehend. They had underestimated humanity, but now they had also underestimated the planet itself. As the war god's fleet was crushed one ship at a time, Aratus realized the grim truth. Earth had become a living weapon, and its ancient power was waking up just as humanity had discovered it. The war gods were no longer the greatest threat in the galaxy. Back on Earth, as the energy surged through the land, Hawk and Dr. Hayes watched in awe. The Earth was becoming more than a battleground. It was transforming into something ancient and powerful, a force that could rival the might of the war gods themselves. The war gods had made their first mistake by underestimating humans, but now they had made their second. They had underestimated the Earth. The ground shook again, this time with even more intensity. The energy from the planet spread outward, wrapping around the Earth like a protective shield. The skies above seemed to glow with an eerie, otherworldly light. The war gods had no idea what was coming. "Do you feel that?" Dr. Hayes whispered, her voice filled with awe. "I feel it," Hawk replied, his eyes locked on the horizon. "And I think the war gods are about to learn what happens when they challenge humanity and the Earth itself." The battle for Earth had only just begun, but this time, humanity would not fight alone. The war gods would learn the true power of Earth and its people. And they would soon discover that under humanity's calm exterior, there was fury unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. The war gods were in chaos. Their once imposing fleet, a symbol of invincibility across the galaxy, was now scattered in Earth's orbit like broken toys, drifting helplessly through the black expanse of space. The power emanating from Earth was no longer just a mysterious force. It was something real, something tangible. Humanity had awakened the fury of the planet itself, and the war gods had never seen anything like it before. Commander Lucas Hawk stood in the control room of the Earth Defense Command, his eyes fixed on the screen that displayed the remnants of the war gods' fleet. Their ships, once so large and intimidating, were now reduced to fragments, drifting aimlessly as the Earth's wrath consumed them. "It's working," Hawk muttered under his breath. "The Earth is fighting back, and it's winning." Dr. Amelia Hayes stood beside him, her mind racing. She had spent years studying the alien technology hidden beneath the surface of Earth, but she never imagined it would lead to something like this. The planet had become an unstoppable force, and it seemed to be evolving with each passing moment. "We've only just begun," Dr. Hayes said, her voice tinged with both awe and trepidation. "The Earth's power is still growing. The war gods haven't seen the full extent of what we've unlocked." Just as the words left her lips, the ground beneath them trembled. The air seemed to crackle with electricity. It was as though the Earth itself was roaring in anger. The Earth's defense systems, powered by the ancient energy from the planet's core, were now fully activated. From the control room's window, they saw something remarkable. The massive energy field that surrounded the planet, a shimmering dome of pure energy, expanded outward in waves, pushing the remains of the war god's fleet further and further away. Earth was asserting its dominance over its space, a silent yet undeniable statement to any force that dared challenge it. "I've never seen anything like this before," Dr. Hayes whispered, her eyes wide with disbelief. "The planet. It's fighting like it's alive. And it's not just the surface. It's coming from deep within. The very core is reacting, and it's alive." Meanwhile, General Aratus, the leader of the war gods, was not one to easily admit defeat. He watched as his ships were wiped out one by one, their shields flickering and failing as the Earth's power overwhelmed them. His flagship, the Gaffer, was still intact, but even its advanced technology was no match for the ferocity of the Earth's pulse. "How is this possible?" Aratus growled, his face twisted in disbelief. He had faced many enemies, but none had ever displayed such power. "We are the war gods. No force should be able to stand against us." His fleet, now in disarray, had no way of escaping the overwhelming energy that engulfed them. The ships that tried to flee were drawn back toward the planet, helpless in the face of the Earth's fury. Every attempt to escape was thwarted, every defensive move useless. Earth had become the ultimate weapon, and the war gods had unwittingly awakened it. In the heart of Earth's command center, Hawk turned to his team. "We need to take this to the next level. The war gods are strong, but they don't know what they're up against. The Earth's power is only getting stronger, and it's time we show them what happens when they think they can conquer humanity. The team worked together, adjusting the planetary defense systems and activating the next phase of the plan. The Earth was now fully awake, and its fury was being channeled into the weapons hidden within the ancient structures. A massive pulse of energy gathered at the planet's core, ready to be unleashed. Back on the War God's flagship, Aratus watched as the energy levels on his ship's scanners began to spike. "What are they doing now?" he muttered, fear creeping into his voice. "Is this some kind of final attack?" It was. In an instant, the pulse from Earth's core erupted, radiating outward in a massive shockwave. The energy wave was unlike anything Aratus had ever seen. Pure, raw power that tore through space, crashing into everything in its path. The Gathur and the remaining War God ships were hit first, their shields buckling under the force. The energy wave twisted and contorted, sending the ships spiraling out of control. Some exploded in violent bursts, while others were pushed toward the planet's surface, unable to escape. Aratus slammed his fist against the control panel. "No, this is not the end. We are the War Gods. We will never surrender." But his words were futile. The wave of energy from Earth's core kept pushing, relentless and unstoppable, until it engulfed his ship entirely. The Gathor was consumed by the energy, its once impressive hull disintegrating under the force. The War Gods had no choice but to face the reality. They were defeated. Back on Earth, the battle seemed to have reached its conclusion. The War God's fleet was nothing more than debris floating in space, scattered and destroyed. But even as the Earth's energy began to dissipate, a sense of tension still lingered. The War Gods had been brought to their knees, but Earth had yet to reveal all of its secrets. Hawk and Dr. Hayes stood together, watching the battle unfold in the control room. Their hands were trembling, not from fear, but from the enormity of what they had just witnessed. Humanity had unleashed the power of the Earth itself, and in doing so, they had proven that they were no longer the helpless species the War Gods had thought them to be. "They thought they could conquer us," Hawk said, his voice filled with pride. "But they didn't know what we were capable of." Dr. Hayes nodded. "They never understood. They thought the Earth was just a planet, a resource to be taken. But they learned the hard way that this planet is alive, and it's ours. And when humanity fights back, we're not alone." The battle for Earth had been won, but this was just the beginning. The War Gods had learned a valuable lesson, and soon the universe would know that humanity was not a species to be underestimated. The War Gods had awoken something far more powerful than they could ever have imagined. The Earth's fury was just the beginning. The dust had settled. The warships that once filled the skies above Earth were now nothing more than charred remnants floating aimlessly in space. The War Gods, once feared across the galaxies, had learned a devastating lesson. The might of Earth was not to be underestimated. But as the hum of victory resonated throughout Earth's defense command centers, there was a quiet realization. This was not the end of the story. The War Gods were not ones to simply surrender. They would come back. In the heart of Earth's command center, Commander Lucas Hawk stood looking at the debris field, the remnants of the once terrifying fleet. He could feel the weight of victory pressing down on him, but his mind was still racing. They had won the battle, yes, but there was a dark, nagging sense that they hadn't seen the full extent of the War Gods' capabilities. "The War Gods won't just give up," he muttered, eyes locked on the screen. "They'll regroup, adapt, and return stronger." Dr. Amelia Hayes stood next to him, her gaze focused on the same view. "You're right. We've only scratched the surface of their power, but we've also shown them that we are not to be trifled with. The Earth's fury, it's still growing, and the War Gods know they can't take us lightly." Her words rang true. Earth had tapped into an ancient power, one buried beneath the surface for eons. The force had allowed them to turn the tide against a seemingly invincible enemy. But this victory was more than just an overwhelming display of power. It was a declaration. The earth had risen, and humanity was its fierce protector. The war gods would not be allowed to threaten their world again. But as Earth celebrated its victory, a message from the vastness of space would change everything. In the dark reaches of space, aboard what remained of the Gathor, Commander Eratus was not dead. His flagship had been destroyed, and his fleet was shattered, but the war gods were not erased to simply disappear. Their warriors were driven by rage, and their leaders were determined to never accept defeat. Eratus stood on the command deck of a new ship, a rebuilt vessel, one far more advanced than the Gathor. It was his pride and his response to the humiliation of their defeat. The war gods had learned about the power of Earth, and now they would return to claim it for themselves. They would learn the true meaning of humanity's fury. "We have underestimated them," Eratus said through gritted teeth, staring at the holographic map of Earth. "But this time, we won't fail. This planet will fall, and we will be the ones to bring it to its knees." Beside him, his second-in-command, General Xena, watched him with cautious eyes. She knew Eratus' pride was a dangerous thing, but she also understood the relentless nature of the war gods. They were about to embark on a new war, one that would take everything they had, and more. "We'll be ready," Xena said with a grim smile. "This time, Earth won't stand a chance. We have the technology, and we'll make sure they feel our wrath." As Eratus turned to her, a cold, calculating smile spread across his face. Yes, they will regret ever defying the war gods. But even as Eratus plotted his revenge, something began to stir within the Earth, something he couldn't foresee. Back on Earth, Commander Hawk and Dr. Hayes were already preparing for the inevitable return of the war gods. Earth's victory had been monumental, but they knew the war gods wouldn't go quietly. They had learned valuable lessons from their first encounter, and humanity would need to be ready for whatever came next. In the command center, a series of rapid, coordinated operations were underway. The energy pulses that had once struck down the war gods' ships were now being studied in great detail. Earth was preparing not only to defend itself, but to ensure the war gods could never return again. "We've unlocked something they never expected," Dr. Hayes said, looking at the data on her screen. "The Earth's core is more than just a power source. It's a sentient force, one that reacts to the threat of invasion. If we can tap into its full potential, we can end this war before it ever truly begins." Hawk nodded, feeling a surge of confidence. "Then let's finish this. The war gods might think they've learned from their mistakes, but they haven't even begun to understand what Earth is capable of." But even as they prepared for the coming storm, a subtle shift occurred. A cosmic ripple, a disturbance in the fabric of space and time, signaled the return of the war gods. They were coming back, not just to conquer, but to wipe out humanity's existence completely. In the distant reaches of space, the war gods' fleet was rebuilding. The new flagship, a massive ship unlike anything Earth had ever seen, was ready for its maiden voyage. It was powered by a combination of alien technology and the devastating energy they had learned to harness after their defeat. The war gods were ready for round two, and they were confident this time would be different. As their fleet set course for Earth, Eratus addressed his crew with fervor. "This time, we will not be defeated. Earth may have won the first battle, but we will win the war. And when we destroy this planet, we will send a message to every corner of the universe. No one challenges the war gods." Xena's eyes gleamed with anticipation. "Let's make sure the humans know their place." Back on Earth, the calm before the next storm was almost unbearable. The power of the Earth still surged beneath the surface, but the looming threat of the war gods' return weighed heavily on everyone's minds. Humanity had proven its resilience, but now the true test was about to begin. They had won the first battle, but the war gods had learned from their mistakes, and they were coming back with vengeance in their hearts. Humanity was about to face its greatest test yet. The real war was just beginning. The unthinkable exit. The Galactic Council was in chaos. The enormous Shining Room, designed to hold the representatives of hundreds of species, was filled with tension. Representatives from all across the galaxy were gathered for an important meeting, and the discussions had been going on for hours. Tensions were rising as the fate of an entire sector of space hung in the balance. At the center of the debate sat the humans, quiet, calm, and composed as usual. They weren't quick to speak, but when they did, their words carried weight. There were murmurs in the room. Many of the council members didn't understand humanity's hesitation to act. Some of the representatives from other species, known for their aggression and ambition, grew impatient. They were eager to make a decision, to take action. But the humans, as always, were careful, deliberate, and strategic. The discussion had reached a critical point. A decision had to be made. Should the council side with the humans in their request for protection against the growing threat from the Xenovar? Or would they risk everything and refuse, hoping the enemy would tire and go away? As voices began to rise and arguments grew louder, the humans remained silent. They were sitting at their table, observing the chaos unfolding around them. There was something unnerving about their calmness. Their faces, as usual, were unreadable. The other species around them debated back and forth, but it was clear that many were beginning to lose patience with the humans' refusal to take a stronger stance. Then, without warning, the room fell into silence. Everyone turned their attention to the humans' representative, Ambassador Reed. She had finally risen from her seat, a calm and steady expression on her face. "We don't have time for this," she said quietly, her voice cutting through the noise. Her words weren't loud, but they were forceful, and they carried authority. "We've given you all the information you need. Now, we're leaving." There was a pause. No one in the room had expected this. The humans had always been patient, always willing to talk, to listen, to find solutions. But now they were simply walking away. The implications were staggering. The council, composed of beings from hundreds of species, had always relied on humanity's wisdom and judgment. But now, in the most critical moment, humanity was leaving them behind. Ambassador Reed stood tall, turning slowly to the rest of the room. "You've made your choice," she said softly. "We'll make ours." She motioned for her team to rise. One by one, the human representatives stood, their faces serious, their movements deliberate. They didn't say another word. The council members were frozen. For a moment, no one knew what to do. Some of them exchanged glances, hoping someone else would speak, but no one did. The humans had stood up, turned their backs on the debate, and began walking toward the door. The air was thick with confusion, disbelief, and fear. "What are they doing?" One of the council members whispered to his neighbor. "They can't just leave. Not like this." But the humans were already heading out. Their departure was swift, controlled, and complete. It was as though they had planned it for months. No one had expected them to act this way. No one had thought that the humans would simply abandon them at such a crucial moment. The room buzzed with questions, but no one had any answers. How could the humans just leave? The Xenovar were growing stronger by the day. The council needed humanity's support. Without it, they were vulnerable. The humans, with all their advanced technology and knowledge, were the one force that could tip the scales in the war. Yet, they were walking out without a word of explanation. In the silence that followed, the council members were left in a state of disbelief. "We've lost them," one of the council leaders muttered under his breath. His face was pale, his voice trembling. "This is bad. Very bad." But there was more to it. Something wasn't right. The humans didn't just leave in anger. There was no shouting, no harsh words. They had departed with eerie calmness, as if they had known something the rest of the galaxy didn't. And that realization, like a slow, creeping dread, began to take hold of the council members. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Council felt powerless. The humans had always been the unpredictable variable, the wild card. Now, they were gone, and no one knew what would happen next. The tension in the room was thick. Some members tried to speak, but the words caught in their throats. The thought that the humans had just walked away without a trace, without any explanation, was enough to send a chill down the spine of even the bravest leader. The council was now faced with an unimaginable reality. What if humanity had left them for good? No one in the room knew the answer, but there was a growing sense of fear. If the humans had decided to abandon the council now, what would happen when the Xenovar came for them? Who would protect them? As the doors closed behind the last of the humans, a dark silence settled over the room. It was the silence of uncertainty, of impending doom, and it was just the beginning. The council was about to learn a harsh truth. When humanity leaves, the galaxy trembles. The silence in the Galactic Council chamber stretched on, heavy and suffocating. It was unnatural. This room was built for debate, for discussion, for the organized chaos of interstellar politics. But now, every being present was frozen, as if the very foundation of the galaxy had just cracked beneath them. The humans were gone. Chancellor Vortak of the Vrel Dominion was the first to break the silence. His deep, guttural voice rumbled through the chamber. They can't be serious. He turned his reptilian eyes toward the others, as if expecting someone to confirm his disbelief. They're bluffing. But no one responded. The Astari delegate, a frail being with bioluminescent tendrils, shifted uneasily. Ambassador Reed is not one to bluff, she murmured. If the humans say they are leaving, then? Her voice trailed off. A low hum of nervous whispers spread through the room. Some members of the council looked toward the doors, half expecting the humans to return. Others, the wiser ones, knew that wasn't going to happen. The humans had made their decision. They always spoke of unity. A Xenthos representative hissed, his mandibles clicking together in agitation. And now, they abandon us, when we need them the most. Ambassador Dren of the Helios Combine, a species known for its cold logic, tapped a slender finger against the table. The question is not why they left, he said slowly, but what they are planning. That single thought sent a ripple of unease through the chamber. The humans never acted without purpose. They were methodical, precise, and if they had chosen to walk away from the council, it was not a rash decision. It was a calculated move. A shudder passed through the chamber as that realization sank in. Do we reach out to them? An elder member of the council asked hesitantly. Perhaps we can convince them to return. Chancellor Vortak scoffed. Do you think they'll listen? They've made their choice. The tension in the room escalated, pressing down like an invisible force. Some members were still in denial. Others had already reached the next stage. Fear. Because if the humans had decided to leave, then it meant only one thing. They knew something the rest of the galaxy didn't. A cold, unsettling silence settled over the council as that thought took root. And for the first time in history, the Galactic Council was afraid. The Galactic Council chamber remained frozen in shock. The echo of the humans' departure still lingered, an unspoken weight pressing down on every representative present. It wasn't just about their sudden exit. It was about why they had left. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Chancellor Vortak of the Vrel Dominion leaned forward, his reptilian eyes narrowing. We must call an emergency session, he growled. This is not a matter to be ignored. The Astari delegate, her bioluminescent tendrils dimming with stress, shifted in her seat. And do what, Chancellor? Beg them to return. Plead for answers. She exhaled slowly, her voice a soft whisper. They will not listen. Not anymore. Ambassador Dren of the Helios Combine tapped a sharp metallic finger against the table. The rhythmic sound filled the chamber, steady and deliberate. We need to think logically, he said, his tone cold as ever. The humans do not act on impulse. They have spent years negotiating, debating, working within the council structure. And yet they left without a fight. That is not their way. Then what is their way, Ambassador? A Xenthos representative hissed, his mandibles clicking together in agitation. Are you suggesting they have something planned? Dren tilted his head slightly, his artificial eyes glowing faintly. They always do. A thick silence followed. The truth was, nobody knew what the humans were thinking, and that, more than anything, terrified them. The humans had been different from the other species in the council. They had arrived centuries ago, a relatively young race among the stars, yet they had adapted to galactic politics with frightening efficiency. They weren't the strongest species, nor were they the most technologically advanced, but they were unpredictable, resourceful, and above all else, dangerous when provoked. For years, their presence had been an anchor, a stabilizing force in the ever-shifting politics of the galaxy. They were mediators when tensions rose, warriors when conflicts erupted, and diplomats when unity was needed. And now, they were gone. Perhaps, the Astari delegate whispered, her glow returning slightly, perhaps we should ask ourselves a different question. Chancellor Vortak turned toward her sharply. And what question is that? The Astari's next words sent a shiver through the chamber. What if the humans didn't leave out of anger, but out of necessity? A chill ran down the spines of every being present. What are you suggesting? One of the elder council members hesitated. The Astari delegate inhaled deeply, her tendrils flickering with nervous energy. The humans knew something we didn't. That much is clear. She glanced around the room, her expression grim. What if they saw a threat coming? Something so great, so terrible, that they knew the council would never survive it. A cold, unsettling silence followed. The room felt different now, heavier, as if an invisible force was pressing down on them, suffocating them with a truth they weren't ready to accept. The Xenovar, a Xenthos whispered. They must have seen the Xenovar as an unstoppable force. So they left us behind. No, Ambassador Dren said sharply. If the Xenovar were the reason, they would have prepared for war. They would have fought. The humans do not run from battle. His glowing eyes flickered with an unsettling thought. Whatever drove them away, it's bigger than the Xenovar. For the first time, true fear spread through the chamber. The Xenovar were already one of the most feared species in the galaxy. A ruthless, war-hungry empire, their fleet had torn through countless civilizations, consuming entire planets in their path. The Council had always relied on the humans to be the shield against them. But if the Xenovar weren't the reason humanity left, then what was? The question hung in the air like a shadow. Chancellor Vortak exhaled slowly, his claws gripping the table. We need to send scouts, he decided. We need to find them. Ambassador Dren turned toward him. And what if they don't want to be found? Vortak's jaw tightened. Then we'll have our answer, won't we? The decision was made. Within hours, a fleet of reconnaissance ships was sent toward human space. Their mission was simple: locate the humans, gather intelligence, and report back. But deep down, every member of the council felt it, that gnawing fear, that cold dread settling in their bones. The humans had always been 10 steps ahead of everyone else. If they had chosen to leave, if they had abandoned the council without looking back, then maybe, just maybe, they weren't the ones in danger. The rest of the galaxy was. The tension in the Galactic Council was palpable. No one slept, no one ate. They simply waited, waiting for any news, any sign of the humans' whereabouts. The sent reconnaissance fleets had barely begun their journey, and already there was a sense of growing unease among the council members. The more they thought about the humans' departure, the more they realized that it wasn't just an exit, it was a warning. Chancellor Vortak paced in his private quarters, his clawed feet clicking against the cold, metallic floor. His mind raced with thoughts. The humans were a puzzle, and their sudden disappearance had shattered any sense of certainty he had. They had never acted impulsively, never abandoned their allies without reason. And yet now they had vanished without a trace. What could they know? What were they preparing for? A chime interrupted his thoughts, the soft sound of an incoming message. Vortak quickly moved to the terminal, his eyes flickering over the transmission's details. It was from the scouting fleet. His heart skipped a beat as he activated the communication feed. "Report," he demanded, his voice sharper than usual. The image of Captain Haskell appeared on the screen. The human officer's expression was grave, his normally calm face tight with concern. "Chancellor," Haskell began, "we found something. Something unexpected." Vortak leaned forward, his heart rate picking up. "What do you mean?" "We've located the last known coordinates of the human fleet," Haskell continued. But he hesitated, as if struggling to find the right words. Vortak's patience was running thin. "What is it, Captain? What did you find?" "An asteroid field," Haskell said finally. "But it's not just any asteroid field. There's something inside it. Something massive." The words hung in the air like a weight, sinking into Vortak's chest. "Massive," he repeated. "Yes, sir," Haskell replied. "We've sent drones to scan the area. And we found anomaly after anomaly. Something powerful, ancient, and perhaps, most troubling of all, it's been deliberately hidden." The connection crackled as Haskell paused. The silence stretched on for a moment, and Vortak could sense the unease in the human officer's voice. "There's something out there," Haskell said, his voice barely above a whisper. "And I think the humans knew about it. But whatever it is, it's too dangerous for anyone else to find." Vortak's mind spun. The implications of Haskell's words were overwhelming. An asteroid field wasn't exactly a hiding place for a fleet of ships, yet the humans had left it behind, hidden in plain sight. The question now was, why? "What's inside this asteroid field, Captain?" he asked, forcing his voice to remain steady despite the growing anxiety in his chest. "We don't know yet, sir," Haskell said. "We need more time to analyze the scans, but the structure we found inside, it's unlike anything we've seen before. It's not natural." Vortak's mind reeled as the possibility of ancient hidden technology began to settle in. The humans had always been known for their advanced understanding of technology, but this was something else. "Keep us updated, Captain," the Chancellor ordered. "And be cautious. Whatever you're dealing with, it sounds like it could be dangerous." "Understood, Chancellor," Haskell responded. "We'll proceed with caution." The transmission ended, and Vortak sat back in his chair, his mind racing. The humans had left something behind, something so powerful that they had gone to great lengths to hide it. But why? And why had they chosen now to leave the Council in the dark? What did the humans know that they weren't telling? Minutes felt like hours as Vortak sat in deep thought, but before he could reach any conclusions, another transmission arrived. This time from the Astari delegate. Her bioluminescent tendrils flickered nervously as she appeared on the screen. "Chancellor," she began, her voice strained, "we've been reviewing the data from the reconnaissance fleet, and there's something disturbing." "What is it?" Vortak asked, his voice tight. "The humans," she hesitated, her voice growing even softer. "They've left behind a message. A warning. And it's directed specifically at the Council." A chill ran through Vortak's spine. He leaned forward. "What kind of message?" The Astari delegate glanced over her shoulder before responding. "It's encrypted, but we've managed to decode part of it. It speaks of a great darkness on the horizon, something that will destroy everything in its path. It says that the Council's petty squabbles and alliances will not matter when it comes." The tension in the room thickened. The message, though cryptic, painted a terrifying picture of an impending threat so great that even the humans had decided to step aside. "The humans knew something was coming," the Astari murmured, her voice trembling, "and they believed we weren't ready." For the first time, the Council members felt the full weight of the humans' departure. It wasn't just a political move. It was a warning. The storm was coming, and they were woefully unprepared. The Galactic Council had never felt such an intense sense of urgency before. Delegates from all corners of the galaxy convened, their discussions now frantic and filled with uncertainty. The humans had left a warning about a great darkness, and now the time for answers was running out. But what could this darkness be? And why hadn't anyone seen it coming? Chancellor Vortak sat at the head of the table, his claws tapping restlessly against the smooth surface. The room was filled with murmurs as the various delegates debated furiously, trying to make sense of the scattered clues they had. But no one seemed to have any answers. "We've been over this," the Xenthos delegate, Orgarn, snapped. "The humans gave us a warning, but they didn't tell us what we're supposed to do with it. They didn't even tell us what we're facing." "Do you really think they knew?" Chancellor Vortak shot back. "Do you think they had all the answers?" Orgarn's mandibles clicked in frustration, but he had no response. The truth was, no one knew what the humans had known. What they had left behind was nothing but riddles, wrapped in layers of mystery. The Astari delegate spoke up, her voice soft but full of concern. "There's another issue we must consider. The humans haven't just abandoned us. They've abandoned their own people. The fleets are gone, their colonies left to fend for themselves. Something drastic must have happened to make them leave so suddenly." Vortak nodded grimly. He had been pondering this exact thought for days. The humans were strategic. They would never walk away from their colonies without a damn good reason. They had always been protectors of their people, their strength a cornerstone of the galaxy's balance. To abandon their own citizens, that seemed impossible, unless they were running from something far worse. A soft, distant beep interrupted his thoughts. It was the communications officer. "Chancellor, urgent message from the scouting fleet," she announced. Vortak's heart skipped a beat. This was it, the answer. He quickly motioned for the message to be played. The holographic image of Captain Haskell flickered to life before him. His face was grim, and there was a look of exhaustion in his eyes, as if he had seen something that had shaken him to his core. "Chancellor, this is Captain Haskell. We have discovered something." The room fell into complete silence, every council member hanging on Haskell's words. "What is it, Captain?" Vortak asked, his voice betraying the unease building within him. "It's a ship," Haskell said. "A massive ship. But it's not just any ship. It's a warship of a scale we've never seen before. We've attempted to scan it, but the readings are inconsistent. There's something blocking our sensors." The tension in the room heightened. A warship of unknown origin, hidden in the farthest reaches of the galaxy. This was no coincidence. "The ship is ancient, sir," Haskell continued, his voice strained. "And it's not just sitting there. It's moving. Slowly, but it's heading straight for us." Vortak's blood ran cold. The entire room seemed to freeze in place. "What do you mean, moving?" The Astari delegate whispered. "How can something like that be moving? And what is it? Who does it belong to?" "We don't know yet," Haskell said, his face dark with worry. "But one thing is certain, it's alive." "Alive?" The council members exchanged confused looks. Ships didn't come alive. They were machines. "We've managed to get close enough to take some preliminary scans," Haskell continued. "There's a strange energy field surrounding the ship. It's not like anything we've encountered before. We don't know what it is, but we're being pulled toward it, like we're being drawn in." The word sent a shockwave through the council. A living ship, a force pulling them in, drawing them closer. Vortak's mind raced. Could it be? He trailed off, unable to finish the thought. Could it be what the humans had warned about? A darkness from beyond their knowledge, an ancient, unknowable threat they had been hiding from for generations. "We don't have much time," Captain Haskell said urgently. "The ship is getting closer. Whatever it is, whatever this force is, it's affecting our systems. Our fleets are losing power, and we're struggling to maintain control. We need reinforcements, and we need them now." Vortak clenched his fists. There was no time left to waste. "Send everything we have to intercept," he ordered, his voice low but commanding. "Mobilize the fleets. We're going to confront whatever this is, once and for all." But deep down, Vortak couldn't shake the feeling that this was no ordinary threat. This wasn't a warship. This was something older, something far more dangerous than anything the galaxy had ever known. And the humans had left them to face it alone. The next few moments passed in a blur of commands and frantic preparations. Ships were dispatched, orders were given, and the entire fleet was thrust into motion. But even as they hurried to intercept the mysterious vessel, one question lingered in Vortak's mind. Was it too late? The warship was coming, and the darkness the humans had warned about was now, unavoidably, within reach. The warship was closer now. The space between it and the Galactic Council's fleets had been reduced to a dangerously small gap. The tension was palpable, as if the entire galaxy held its breath in anticipation of the unknown. The vastness of space, once so comforting in its silence, now felt suffocating with the weight of what was coming. Chancellor Vortak stood in front of the large, shimmering holographic map of the galaxy, his eyes scanning the data feed from the front lines. His fingers hovered over the controls, ready to issue any command necessary. He was no stranger to battle strategies, but this was different. This was something far beyond his understanding. "Chancellor, we've received another transmission from Captain Haskell," a voice called out from across the command center. Vortak didn't wait for the message to be delivered in full. "Patch it through," he ordered, his voice tinged with urgency. The holographic image of Captain Haskell flickered into view again, his face weary but determined. He didn't waste any time. "Chancellor, we've just encountered it. The ship, it's unlike anything we've ever seen." Haskell's voice shook slightly, betraying the fear he was trying to suppress. It's alive, Chancellor. We thought it was a ship at first, but it's more like a creature. Its movements are organic. Its energy signature is fluctuating in ways we can't explain. And there's something else. There are voices." "Voices?" Vortak repeated, his heart racing. "What do you mean, voices?" "We're hearing them," Haskell replied, his tone strained. "They're distant at first, like whispers in the wind, but they're growing louder, and—" He paused, as if considering his next words carefully. "I think it's trying to communicate." The room went silent. The council members exchanged uncertain glances, unsure of how to interpret this new information. The thought of a ship, or whatever it was, talking was almost too much to process. Could it be some kind of ancient intelligence, one that had been dormant for eons? Had it awakened now for some unknown reason? Chancellor Vortak's mind raced as he absorbed the implications. If the warship was truly alive, it could mean there were powers at play beyond their comprehension. Forces that had been in the galaxy long before the first stars had even formed. And if it was trying to communicate, what would it say? What did it want? "We're preparing to send a team to the ship," Haskell continued, his voice growing more urgent. "But the closer we get, the stronger the force becomes. It's as if the ship is pulling us toward it. We can't break free." The ship's air. There was a sudden, eerie silence. The transmission flickered for a moment, and then the captain's voice returned, weaker now. "The energy field it's pulling us in. We're being drawn toward it faster than we can adjust." "Captain!" Vortak shouted, his voice hoarse with fear. "What is happening?" There was no answer. The transmission cut off abruptly, and the map before the Chancellor flickered with static. The council room erupted into chaos as members scrambled to make sense of the situation. "Can we re-establish contact?" Vortak demanded, his voice barely audible over the clamor. "We're trying, Chancellor," one of his officers said, "but the signal is distorted. It's as if the entire region of space is being affected by some kind of interference." Vortak clenched his fists. He knew this wasn't just about a lost communication. It was about something far more serious. The warship, the living entity they were dealing with, was pulling their ships in, and it was only a matter of time before it would pull them all into its grip. If it was alive, It could have its own motives, dark motives. And what if those motives were as destructive as the whispers they were hearing? "We cannot wait any longer," Vortax said, his voice calm but firm. "We have to act now. Mobilize the fleets. Prepare the assault teams. We need to break through this interference and get answers before it's too late." As his orders were carried out, Vortax felt the weight of what was to come. The darkness the humans had warned about was here, and it was far more terrifying than anyone could have imagined. The ships in the fleet moved into position, their engines thrumming as they readied themselves for battle. They approached the massive living warship, its dark silhouette looming ahead, its presence like an oppressive shadow. The air seemed to thicken with dread as they neared. Then, a new transmission came through. A distorted image flickered on the screen, and a voice, too distorted to make out clearly, broke through the static. But one thing was clear. "We have waited long for this moment." The voice was deep, ancient, and it echoed with an eerie resonance that seemed to chill the very bones of the council members. It was clear now. This was no ordinary encounter. This wasn't a warship, or even a fleet. It was a being, and it had a presence that was unmistakable. Vortax stood still, his breath catching in his throat. The voice sent a shiver down his spine. What was it waiting for? And why had the humans left so suddenly? Had they known something they hadn't told the galaxy? What was coming now? His mind raced, but the answer seemed to slip further and further from his grasp. The darkness was no longer just a warning. It was alive, and it was upon them. The final moments before the clash were like the calm before a storm. The fleets, now fully aligned and prepared for whatever was about to unfold, hovered in space, surrounding the massive living warship. Its dark presence filled the viewports, a silent sentinel that seemed to watch them, waiting. The eerie whispers had grown louder, and now they were unmistakably clear. It was as if the ship itself was speaking directly into their minds, a voice that wasn't just heard, but felt deep within their souls. "You are trespassers." The voice, a low, thunderous echo that seemed to ripple through the very fabric of space, froze everyone in their seats. The council members who had been bracing for battle exchanged terrified glances. No one had expected a response, not like this. It wasn't a simple challenge. It was a warning. And that warning felt final, like a sentence being handed down. Chancellor Vortax stood at the command console, his hands clenched tightly around the edges. His eyes burned with the weight of leadership. There was no turning back now. The galaxy was on the edge, and the fate of every living being in it rested on the decisions made in the next few moments. "Prepare for impact," he shouted, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. His words were cold, calculated, but his heart raced as the ominous hum of energy filled the command center. Every ship in the fleet was now fully charged, ready to fire the moment the order was given. As the ships closed in, a strange force began to tug at them, like invisible hands pulling them toward the massive ship. The engines of the fleet strained against the pull, but it was futile. The gravitational force was growing stronger, and the ships were powerless to resist it. They were being drawn closer inch by inch. "This is it," murmured Captain Haskell's voice over the communication line, his tone tight with fear and determination. "The ship is alive. It's pulling us in. There's no escaping it." Vortax's mind raced. If they couldn't escape, if they couldn't fight back against this force, then they had to find a way to outsmart it. It was clear that brute force would not work against such an ancient, powerful being. They had to think differently. They had to find its weakness. But time was running out. The first volley of energy blasts shot out from the Council's fleet, aimed at the heart of the living ship. The beams of energy hit their mark, but instead of shattering the ship's hull, they were absorbed into the darkness, swallowed whole as if the warship itself had been expecting them. No explosion, no resistance. It was like attacking a void, nothing but emptiness in return. And then the reality of their situation set in. The voices that had whispered now became louder, almost deafening, overwhelming their senses with each passing second. The pressure in the room was palpable. Everyone could feel the weight of the impending disaster. And then, in the midst of it all, a new sound emerged, a hum, a vibration that wasn't just heard, but felt in their very bones. It resonated deep within, like a warning from some primal force. The Council's fleets were now within arm's reach of the warship, the distance between them closing rapidly, and yet the tension only grew. What would happen when they reached it? Suddenly, the ship before them, the warship, the creature, moved. Not in a slow, deliberate way, but with incredible speed, as though it had been waiting for the right moment to strike. Its massive, dark silhouette began to warp and twist, the once steady form shifting into something more grotesque and alien. It was growing, expanding, its surface undulating like it was alive, as though its very skin was adapting to the environment. Vortak watched, wide-eyed. The ship's form continued to distort, and it was now clear that this was no ordinary craft. It was an entity, a being capable of shaping itself at will, transforming its appearance as though it were a living organism. This wasn't just a weapon or a ship. It was a force of nature. "It's trying to take us all down." Captain Haskell's voice crackled over the line. "We're losing control." Before the Chancellor could respond, the warship unleashed a devastating shockwave, its energy crashing into the fleets like a tidal wave. The shockwave radiated outwards, tearing through the fleets, tossing ships around like ragdolls. Systems began to fail as the energy overload overwhelmed every ship in its path. For a moment, there was complete chaos. The fleet was thrown into disarray, but some ships managed to stay intact, their pilots doing everything they could to regain control. Vortak watched as his fleet began to scatter, trying to avoid the overwhelming power of the warship, but it was too late. The creature was upon them, and it would not be denied. "This is the end," Vortak whispered to himself as the warship loomed closer, its twisted form now a terrifying shadow against the vast expanse of space. There was no escape. No reinforcements would arrive in time. This was the final stand. In that moment, a voice cut through the panic, a voice that carried a strange sense of resolve. "Humanity is watching." The council members froze. They recognized that voice. They had heard it before. The humans, the ones who had disappeared without a trace. But now, their presence, their influence, was being felt more than ever before. It was then that Vortak realized the terrible truth. The humans had known. They had known this ship, this creature, was coming. And they had left the galaxy behind, leaving the council to face it alone. The humans had abandoned them, but they had left behind something even more important. A warning. A warning that was now becoming reality. And there was nothing left to do but fight.